I've gotten really good at disappearing from YouTube. Just for the record, if you've been wondering where I've been for the past month or two, so have I. My parents realized their time on Earth was limited about the same time they discovered retail therapy. It dawned on Dad after Mom's passing that downsizing was going to be a tough job, so he left it to me. That's part of the job I agreed to as his executor, and it's probably the hardest part so far. Sounds like an 80s action drama, doesn't it? The Executor. Anyhows, putting aside any emotional attachments to decades-old items, we're no longer in garage sale season, and it's hard to have an estate sale when you're not providing an estate as a venue. Things are going to be a bit cluttered around here for a while. Stick around to the end to see just what kinds of oddities I've been finding around here. I may also dip into my carry-along craft bag so you can see what I've been working on in the meantime. We're just gonna fly casual. The too long didn't watch is, I moved. The slightly longer version is, my dad passed away at the end of August, and the husbeast and I decided to move to my parents' former home. It's taking some time, and as you may imagine, combining two households while trying to sort out and liquidate a good half to 2/3 of that stuff is a challenge. I'm trying to figure out what I'm taking and pitching of my own stuff while sorting through 80 years of someone else's clutter. Like, U-Haul sells bundles of boxes, and I bought the small and medium box amounts for what they estimate a 2 to 3 bedroom house would need. I didn't buy large boxes or wardrobe boxes because, face it, I can toss the stuff that would go into those boxes into a garbage bag and haul it across the city faster than I can pack it in a box, transport it, and unpack. To add to this, I also bought about 20 book boxes because we're a heavily literate family. I don't know if U-Haul is estimating their box counts based on Marie Kondo levels of clutter, but we've repacked some of those boxes more than once thus far. So the move continues as best as it can. In the meantime, welcome to my new old house. Or old new house. Or something like that. The main parts of this house you guys will likely see are the living room, which is where I shot the cat mat video, the kitchen, which may become the site of a baking stream or episode when I eventually have a laptop and a clean kitchen island, and the basement. Welcome to my liminal nightmare. It's really not that bad once you see past the clutter. The space was finished sometime in the 1980s by the owner prior to my parents. I use air quotes because not only is this space heavily influenced by its time, but the folks who did it used such quality products as plastic faux stone paneling, beadboard, and grooved wood slats. Basically, most of these walls are insulated, but there's only one wall with any actual drywall. Despite that fact, it's a strangely warm and cozy space when you clean it up. The bulk of this area is going to be my studio workspace. While Mum and Dad originally wanted it to be the rec room and home office, it's mostly been used as storage space, overflow grandchild parking, and a half-hearted workout area for the past decade or two. Once Mum and Dad put a TV in the living room and gained a laptop, getting anyone to watch TV or use a computer down here was almost impossible, unless they were sleeping down here or trying to avoid Dad's tendency to watch 24-hour news on a constant basis. I figure that once I have the furniture fully cleaned, this will make a nice little space for handcrafting and sewing. I'm leaning into the whole 1980s aesthetic. As much as I would like to fully renovate the basement, I can't afford to do it quite yet. I know Dad wanted to gut the space and put in new flooring, ceilings, and drywall before the Parkinson's slowed him down. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. It will get done eventually, but until then, we've got wood panels and a carpet in desperate need of a steam cleaning. I am a bit stymied over the missing faux rock panel. I suspect Dad or my brother removed it in exploration to see if there was drywall behind it, though usually when one of them would do that, the panel would still be left leaning up against the wall. So, color me confused. Though it is possible they had to destroy the panel in order to remove it, so I guess that could be the reason it's disappeared. Fact is, I know at least one crochet YouTuber who would probably move into this basement in a heartbeat. It does kind of have that whole Stranger Things basement vibe, so we'll see how it goes. So when you ask what I've been doing with my time over the past couple of months, lots of cleaning. We've destroyed a couple of spider habitats. They've needed reminding of the whole bargain that if I never see them, they don't die. I make no such promises on behalf of the kittens. They're welcome to eat all the spiders they find as long as I don't need to know about it. The basement is far from finished. There's a whole bunch of stuff I need to sort through and get rid of. I'm also trying to figure out where to put my cube shelving when it gets here. Until that's dealt with, I'll probably be cutting out a lot of my stuff upstairs on the kitchen table. That said, I do have a nice workspace for my various machines, and I've put together a pretty solid rec room for all of the various bits of furniture Mom and Dad were storing down here. Now the part you've probably been waiting for. What have I been working on? Not a whole lot, actually. I've been cleaning and moving and trying to get things tied up. It doesn't stop me from carrying along my works in progress in the hope that I can finish something. The cat mat was a fun afternoon, but I have other things I need to be getting back to. I have a pair of socks that need finishing. Those are made in my size. I have yet to cast on my mother-in-law's Christmas socks, and to be honest, it should be priority number 1 right now, so if your next video is yet another vanilla sock adventure, that's the reason. I apologize in advance. I meant to put some of my Patreon money into a circular sock machine, but then we got kittens, and vaccinations can be expensive. I think the kittens are probably worth it. Besides, it really wouldn't be Yule without me freaking out at the last minute because I hadn't finished a pair of socks. While I'm thinking about it, thank you so much, patrons, on behalf of both myself and the kittens, particularly the one who got a little too close to a desk chair last Sunday and had to go to the vet for a sore paw. She's doing fine now. Hopefully that's the last vet visit until next year. And by next year, I mean later next year, not next month next year. I have a crocheted bag on the go. I started this when Dad was in the hospital because I needed something to do with my hands that didn't require a lot of counting. It's been languishing because it required more counting than I thought, and once I was no longer commuting to the hospital every day, it kind of fell by the wayside. I'd like to pick it back up again, maybe with the camera on this time, because I believe it's an antique pattern, if memory serves. The pie shawl was restarted not long after it was frogged. I tried to work on it at the hospital, but again, too much counting on the lace section. I'm not working on it right now because kittens. Kittens and thin thread don't get along. I have a couple of lace collars I'm tatting that you can't see, because at least one of them is a surprise. It would likely have been done already if the SAG-AFTRA strike hadn't given me the opportunity to procrastinate, so I guess that's a hint. Not in my carry bag is a self-drafted expanded Lutterloh ruler extension. I have no idea if it works or not. And a Mrs. Depew drafted home pattern. That may also give you a couple of hints to some upcoming content. No, they're not for the same project, 2 entirely different sets of rulers for both of those systems. Lutterloh is a drafted home pattern experience that originated out of Germany. Mrs. Depew's system comes from French sources, I think, possibly from the original rival to the German system, Eclair Coupe Paris. There's a whole historical wild ride in there that I'd love to take a look at if I can find enough sources. I'd also love to have a few period-accurate garments that didn't come from a reproduction draft or a romanticized vision of the time period. If this gets me there, so much the better. If you want to be notified when I start playing around with those drafting systems, make sure you subscribe and hit the little bell down by the subscription button. But that, in a nutshell, is what I've been up to, from the sad and mundane to the exciting and new. Hopefully the next video will be taking advantage of the new space we're setting up here. I have so many things I'd like to start work on. See you then! Of course that's not everything. I promised weird things found around the house. More Glaxel-based moisturizing cream than anyone needs ever. Though I keep seeing promoted ads in Reddit and elsewhere about how Gen Z is all over the moisturizer thing, so I guess I'm all set for keeping my youthful complexion over the next 50 years. Creepy figurines. We don't know if Mom and Dad saw some actual charm in them, or if they were a way to passive-aggressively hint when somebody should be doing something around the house. A stepladder in the main bedroom. I suspect it was renovation related, but if you have other ideas, I invite you to please speculate somewhere I won't have to see oogie insinuations about my parents, thanks. There's like a cabinet that my parents were using for doing things like potting and gardening and stuff like that, which just has a whole bunch of miscellaneous yard stuff in it, and apparently macrame. And I would understand if it was macrame that actually held a potted plant, but it doesn't. It's just macrame, which I don't recall my mom doing since like the 1970s. I barely even remember it. I remember her quilting, I remember her doing cross-stitch. I don't have an actual memory of her doing macrame, so it had to be a long, long time ago. A gun cabinet. It was easy to forget this one. It was installed by the previous owners. Dad did some birding in his youth, but his guns were all but forgotten in a moving box for literal decades until he gave them to my brother. The most action this cabinet ever got was storing VHS cassettes of the original Star Wars trilogy and Star Trek movie series. I'm considering putting up a curtain and some LEDs to make it look like a window. Or maybe storing the Husbeast's Nerf guns. We found out my mum had a serious addiction to throw pillows, and Dad never got around to getting rid of them. When the Husbeast was trying to decide which of the spare rooms would become his office, he opened the closet door to find it stuffed full of throw pillows. We recently cleaned it out, and there were enough pillows to fill 4 of those large clear bags that you use for yard work. The sad fact is, there's more of them in the other spare room closet. Throw pillows aren't cheap, folks. The few I've picked up have been between $20 and $40 per pillow, which is why they're generally mismatched. Mum bought hers in pairs from goodness knows where. Some IKEA, some from boutique home stores. They're probably going to our local women in need, but damn, that's a lot of throw pillows. See, the Yule before she passed, we went shopping at Fabricland, and she kept coming back to this stupid throw pillow with, I think, a moose on it, and told me she wanted it, but Dad would kill her if she brought another throw pillow into the house. My reaction was, it's just a throw pillow, he can chill out. Bear in mind, I wasn't observant enough to realize the throw pillows in the living room would change over time. So yeah, I guess as far as addictions go, throw pillows are pretty tame, but I never expected to have enough to make my own squishy ball pit, if you know what I mean. There are prototype hockey helmets from the early 1970s in our breezeway. Little known fact, the CCM hockey helmet is my older brother. Like Athena, it sprang, fully formed, from my father's head. Dad was an industrial designer working at CCM, which I think stood for Canada Cycle and Motor, when there was a call to all the sporting equipment manufacturers to come up with a standards-approved helmet for children. The way I heard it, nobody wanted to touch the project, mostly because it opened the company up to legal issues. Hockey can be a dangerous sport, so that makes sense. Dad, being a young up-and-comer who liked puzzles, wanted to work on the project badly enough, he went over his own supervisor's head to get approval to give the helmet a shot. The result was a padded helmet made in 2 parts that could be adjusted as the child grew and would crumple on impact. Yep, the first design was apparently made of a similar plastic as a bike helmet. They had to come up with their own standards because there weren't any at the time. I gather it was a matter of getting in front of a member of the Standards Association and showing how it could either deflect or protect. Funnily enough, they did apparently see legal repercussions, not because anyone got hurt, but because they didn't. Even $20 for a helmet back in the early 70s was expensive, and if your helmet crumpled on impact, you had to buy a new one. Folks didn't like that, so even though a couple of kids apparently hit their heads against hard objects like the boards or the posts holding the net, and skated away from it, their helmets were ruined. I mean, that was back in the day when you could tell a company something was wrong with their product and they'd actually listen instead of just soaking the cost of the lawsuit and continuing on with their crappy practices, but I digress. They yanked Dad back in. He'd left the job for something else in the meantime, and he let them know that they could safely increase the strength of the plastic. There's a set of blueprints somewhere in our family from that second design run that Dad made sure has his name. If they're not around here, maybe my brother has them. If they are around here, maybe it might be something that the Hockey Hall of Fame might want. We've often thought of having them framed, but that's just us. Dad was never given credit for his work. He was an employee of CCM at the time, so I believe the design is attributed to either the company or the staff. The company did win an award for the design, and because it was so modular, it's been adopted as the standard design for all modern hockey helmets. So yeah, my brother and I grew up being told to take a second-generation prototype with us if we were doing anything dangerous. There's possibly one somewhere around here covered in skateboarding stickers from the 1980s. When they said your older sibling should protect you, though, I don't think this is what they meant. Hey. Hi. No, you can't. Thank you. This space was finished sometime in the 1980s by the owners prior to my parents. Yeah, hi. Sweetie, no, come on. A gun cabinet. It was easy to forget this one. It was installed by the previous owners. Dad did some birding in his youth, but his guns were all but forgotten in a moving box for literal decades until he gave them to my brother. Hi. The bulk of this area is going. While I'm thinking of it, thank you patrons on beat. Seriously? You sure? You gonna be okay? Is that where you want to be? No, that's where you want to be. You want to be right there at my neck. You cannot be right there at my neck. Stop. Stop. What's with you? Nobody will be able to hear anything but your purring. Maybe that's the point.